It's already October, and that means that Halloween is quickly approaching us. I'm not a huge fan of Halloween, but I love the games because there's monsters, aliens, and most importantly, zombies. Unfortunately, the game I'm reviewing only features the monsters and aliens, but it's a good start for the Halloween theme. At least, it is in my opinion. To my knowledge, I've never seen Alien Storm in the arcades, but apparently it started there and was ported over to the Genesis. The Genesis version is the port I'm looking at for this review. By looks, I don't think it was changed much, but without having played the game, it's difficult to tell. The story of the game is simple and generic, although I had to look it up on Wikipedia because I couldn't find a manual for it. A bunch of aliens decide to attempt to take over Earth, and two humans and a robot, named Alien Busters, decide that they don't like this invasion too much. So they go through a few stages blasting aliens apart and showing them what's up. That's pretty much the gist of it. Although there are 3 players to choose from, none of them have any advantage, or even disadvantage, over the other. Other than looks, weapon used, and special attacks, the power and speed is all identical. So it's really just asking the question, who would I rather look like, to decide who you want to go with. The gameplay is simple. You go from one screen to the next bashing alien heads in with various firearms. Mashing B is the norm for this game. Pressing A will launch a special attack, doing heavy damage to everyone on the screen. The robot is kind of comical as he'll self-destruct and then run back over from the off-screen to pick his head back up. The chick has a missile drop on the screen, doing damage but nothing to herself. The dude just calls in a strafing run. The only other button, other than start to pause, is C, and that varies depending on the kind of mode you're playing. Let me explain this for a bit. For the most part, the game consists of a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Almost every stage, there's an additional parts of the game where you either have a scrolling side shooter or first-person view blast fest. I don't even know if blast fest is a word, but I'm sticking to it. The side-scrolling part isn't anything extraordinary. You just run at hypersonic speeds shooting anything in your path. How you manage to run this fast, I have no freaking clue, but apparently being an alien buster gives you the running ability of Speedy Gonzales. The FPS segments, on the other hand, are actually pretty fun. You can badly damage the environment, often revealing energy and life power-ups. In the meantime, you need to destroy any aliens that show their ugly mugs at you. This starts out easy, but gets increasingly difficult as many more of the enemies show up on the screen. More aliens means more crap being spewed at you. If you have a friend to play with, bring him or her along, as the extra firepower would help tremendously in the later stages. Also, the final boss is one of these, and it can get pretty hairy very quickly. But once you clear all the enemies out, the boss just sits there. He's not one to be spitting anything at you. I guess there's only so much a giant brain can do. Also, I should mention that the ending really sucks. After a few paragraphs of horrible, generic dialogue, you get treated to the credits where the characters and aliens dance some pretty god-awful music. Now that I'm mentioning bosses, I may as well put in these notes. Other than the final boss, there's only really 2 other bosses that appear in the game. You fight one of them twice. It's a large thing that crawls around with a tail like a scorpion. It'll fire beams at you, alternating from in front to behind of it. It'll also randomly spit out what looks to be literal garbage at you. If you can get down the pattern of the attack, this boss is actually pretty simple. After the second meeting of it, another conical shaped creature will appear. It'll constantly be firing exploding projectiles at you, but fortunately your attacks outrange the aliens. So if you can manage to stay just outside the aliens' perimeter, you'll be able to attack it without suffering any major health loss. And I'm not sure if this is considered a boss, but you do get to blast apart the rotten anus of a UFO. It's pretty disturbing, but hey, that's what it looks like to me. I'm sorry for being honest. So when you're not fighting bosses, destroying supermarkets, and chasing after UFOs, you are simply just beating in alien brains. As I said before, much of the game is just mindless button mashing. The aliens don't have a ton of attacks, and almost all of them will put you on the ground for a second or 2. Smashing the B button does a basic combo, although the order and method of attack seems to be completely random. My biggest problem is that randomness. Sometimes you can manage to knock an alien down and defeat it in a second hit. Other times, that same alien will take well over 5 shots to kill. There's no consistency to your attacks. Second, I mentioned that C does different things depending on the mode you're playing. It does nothing in the shooter segments, and in the side-scrolling hyperspeed part, you jump. But of course, you can't jump in the beat-em-up phases of the game. Nope. Instead, pressing C forces you to roll halfway across the screen. It works fairly well as an evasion tactic, but why can't I just jump like a normal fighting game? Why this half-assed roll? And although you can press B in the middle of it to do a diving attack, I really haven't noticed any aliens taking any damage from it. Instead, it looks more like it forced the enemies away from the character for a few seconds, giving you a brief break into fighting. But most times, if you're evading with that useless roll, you're being hounded by other aliens, so although that shoulder ram pushed back one alien, you still have 3 on your ass looking to have you for dinner. This reminds me of the attacks of the aliens. There's not much to them. The winged creatures will lift you up in the air and just simply drop you down to the ground. Yeah, that's really threatening. The gremlin types will punch and then breathe fire at you. The snail types are practically harmless, save for their rarest little swipe at you. The ones that crawl on the ground will leap at you and devour you for a few seconds. You must not taste good though, because they spit your ass out anyway. I know, I'm bashing on this game quite a bit, so you're probably asking if there's any redeeming factors. Well, believe it or not, there are. Take a look at the graphics. They're pretty smooth and colorful. My favorite effects come in the FPS segments where you get to actually destroy the environments. I already enjoy the FPS segments the most in this game, but having a decent graphical palette helps the cause. The aliens do seem to have some pretty good detail in them as well, especially in the time that this game was made. Being that this was just an arcade port, it looks the part. Hell, you don't even have lives, you have credits. That just screams arcade. The music is also pretty interesting. It's not something that's really screechy, like a normal Sega song. At times, it actually is pretty catchy. In fact, the final stage music is actually pretty epic. I'll let you listen to it for a little bit here. Not bad, huh? The main fault of this game is the difficulty, though. The bosses are predictable, so the damage can be minimized, but near the end of the game you just get swarmed by the regular garden variety aliens and can't really do too much once you get attacked. In fact, I needed a code to get 9 lives, credits, to finish the game, with 5 remaining at the end. This was even on easy. Maybe I just suck at the game, but it seems to be a bit too unforgiving at times with the alien aggression. If you don't like using cheats like this, you're in luck, because the game can be completed in about half an hour. So if you enjoy starting over just to finish the game, you won't have to spend too long catching up on your last checkpoint. One more final note and I'll wrap this review up. Remember back when the SNES and the Sega Genesis were in their little console wars, battling it out over who was better? Remember Sega's campaign slogan? For those who don't, it was, Sega does what Nintendo don't. Sega decided to arm themselves in Alien Storm, and on the screen where you get your adventure rated, there's a Genesis does slogan on the wall. Seriously, Sega? You had to put in that one cheap-ass plug for yourself? We're already playing a Sega game on a Sega console. Do we really need you to remind us of this shit? Alien Storm is a pretty interesting game, and I was unsure what to rate it. It has a few cool points to it, like the FPS segments to keep the gameplay fresh and some pretty good music and visuals. However, the bosses, overwhelming aggression of the aliens, and just plain stupid ending brought my rating down a few points. If anything, I think they should have had each character stand out a bit more, instead of just being the same person in a different costume. So yes, it could have benefited from some more work, but it's still a playable game, which is more than I can say for a lot of other games I've played. Final score? 6 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.